When a loved one left this world, the grieving didn't just speak their name. They cooked it. They seasoned it. They carried it in bowls and baskets to the fire, to the grave, to the circle of mourners. In Native American traditions, food was not simply sustenance. It was a sacred language, a language that could speak to the living and to the dead. Every grain of corn, every strip of smoked meat, every sip of broth was a message. We remember you. We honor you. We send you on your way. Today, on the America We Forget, we journey into the heart of these sacred meals. 10 Native American funeral foods that honored the dead. Some were offerings for the spirit's journey. Some were comfort for the mourners. All were steeped in meaning, memory, and the belief that death is not an ending, but a passage. 1. Cedar-smoked venison with sage ash in the woodlands, deer was more than meat. It was a living symbol of strength, sacrifice, and the hunt. When a hunter passed away, serving venison at their funeral was a way of returning that gift to the Creator. The meat was smoked slowly over cedar wood, the fragrant oils seeping into every fiber. Sage leaves were burned until they became fine ash, then sprinkled over the meat, not for taste, but for purification. The cedar smoke curled upward like a bridge between worlds. Mourners ate in silence, each bite a prayer, each breath of smoke, a reminder that the hunter's spirit was still moving through the forest. 2. Wild rice and bone broth. Offering among the Ojibwe and other Great Lakes peoples, wild rice, manumin, was a sacred gift from the Creator, believed to have been placed in the lakes for the people to find. For funerals, it was cooked slowly in a rich bone broth, sometimes made from the last animal the deceased had hunted. The broth was thick, earthy, and nourishing, a reminder of the cycles of life and death. Bowls were placed near the fire or burial site. Some was eaten, but a portion was always left untouched, an offering for the spirit. The steam rising from the bowls was believed to carry messages to the ancestors, a visible thread between the living and the dead. 3. Cornmeal and berry mourning cakes. Corn was life. Berries were memory. Together they formed small, dense cakes baked on hot stones and wrapped in leaves. These mourning cakes were sometimes marked with pressed herbs or carved lines, each symbol telling part of the soul's journey. The sweetness of the berries softened the heaviness of the moment, while the cornmeal grounded the mourners in the earth's abundance. In some traditions, the final cake was buried with the body, a last taste of the land they had walked, final gift for the road ahead. 4. Turtle soup of transition. The turtle, in many native traditions, represents the earth itself, enduring, patient, eternal. Its meat, especially the liver, was simmered with wild herbs, roots, and sometimes corn for hours, creating a broth that was both rich and restorative. This dish was served during multi-day mourning ceremonies. The slow cooking mirrored the slow passage of grief, and the broth was believed to carry healing properties for both body and spirit. To drink turtle soup was to accept the turning of the seasons and the turning of life itself. 5. Smoked fish head broth for the ancestors. Coastal and river tribes, nothing from the fish was wasted, especially not the head. Fish head broth, thickened with cattail root or cornmeal, was served to elders during funeral gatherings. The eyes were said to offer clarity, the bones, strength. The steam, rising into the air, was a message to the ancestors. It was a meal, yes, but also a sacred conversation between generations, spoken in the language of food. 6. Acorn mash with spirit herbs. In California and the Southwest, acorns were a staple, but they were also symbolic. Gathered in autumn, the season of endings, they were ground, leached, and mashed into a thick paste. For funerals, the mash was mixed with sweetgrass, mint, or sage. herbs chosen for their spiritual properties. The bitterness of the acorn reminded mourners of grief. The sweetness of the herbs reminded them of love. It was a dish of balance, sorrow and gratitude in the same bite. 7. Fire-roasted game with memory stones. Small game, rabbit, quail, squirrel, was roasted over open flame and served, with hot stones placed in the center of the platter. These stones were gathered from places the deceased had walked: riverbanks, hunting trails, sacred grounds. As the meat was eaten, the stones cooled. When the meal ended, the stones were buried or placed on the grave. It was a ritual of warmth, memory, and return, a way of giving the earth back what it had lent. 8. Blood corn soup of farewell. In some plains tribes, blood from the final hunt was mixed with cornmeal and wild onions to create a thick, iron-rich soup. It was served in small portions, not to feed the body, but to honor the spirit. The red color symbolized life. The corn, continuity. Sharing it was a final bond between the living and the departed, a way of saying, we are still connected. 9. Spirit trail mix for the journey. Dried berries, roasted seeds, smoked meat shreds, and crushed nuts were mixed into a pouch and placed beside the body. This wasn't for the mourners. It was for the soul's journey. Some tribes believed the spirit walked a long road to the next world, and this humble, hearty mix was meant to sustain it. It was a gesture of care, beyond the veil. 10. Funeral feast of the four directions. The final dish was not a single recipe. It was a grand ritual, a symbolic map of the universe laid out on a table. The feast was divided into 4 quadrants, each representing a cardinal direction and a stage of life. North, smoked meat for strength and endurance, honoring the wisdom of elders and the resilience of the spirit. South, sweet berries for memory and joy, a reminder of youth and the sweetness of shared moments. East, golden corn for rebirth and new beginnings, symbolizing the rising sun and the promise of renewal. West, bitter herbs for grief and reflection, marking the setting sun and the acceptance of endings. Mourners would move clockwise around the table, taking a bite from each quadrant in turn. This act was more than eating. It was a ceremonial journey, a way of walking the circle of life in miniature. These dishes weren't just food, they were farewells. They were the final embrace between the living and the dead. They carried grief, gratitude, and guidance. And they remind us that in native traditions, even mourning was a meal shared with the land. If this journey moved you, helped you remember, or opened your heart to a deeper kind of history, like this video to honor the traditions that fed the soul, share it with someone who believes food is more than fuel. Subscribe to the America We Forget for more stories that deserve to be remembered. Until next time, may your table carry memory.